These days, I do most of my CI/CD pipelines using GitHub Actions. But I've been doing this for a while using things like TeamCity, Azure DevOps Pipelines, Travis CI, AppVeyor. And there's one thing that always seems to happen to me when I'm creating a new one, and that is that it takes a good dozen tries to get that workflow to succeed the first time. Fortunately, there is a way that we can run GitHub Actions locally. Let's mash on that.
Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Asp.Net Monsters. In today's episode, Dave's going to talk to us about how to avoid the embarrassment of showing people that your build has failed 16 times in a row by just doing it locally.
That's the plan.
I need this.
Me too, and I wish I knew it existed a while ago because it's been around for a while, and I just didn't know about it. Thanks to our friend David West for pointing me towards this project, which is Act, and it allows us to run GitHub Actions locally. Now, the way GitHub Actions work, we define our workflows in a .github/workflows folder. There's YAML files that have a bunch of tasks, jobs and tasks and things that run. And one of the really nice things about the way that's structured is that if we submit a pull request with a change to the workflow, we have the ability to run that workflow just within that pull request. So we do have the ability to experiment with and make changes to our workflow files and not break everybody's workflows. We can just test it within our pull request, but it's still awkward sometimes if you're the feedback cycle is a little bit slow. If I have to push changes to my pull request, have it run within the GitHub Actions architecture and wait for the results through GitHub.
And that's especially frustrating. That's especially frustrating when you after you hit go and you're like, wait a minute, I know that's not going to work, and then you
exactly.
You have to do all those steps again for a known failure where you don't a zero chance of success. And you're still waiting on a cycle.
Yeah, and I'll run into stuff where I'm like, oh, this thing is going to download resources from a previous step in the build. I wonder where it's going to put them. I don't know. I guess I'll just check this in, and I will literally check in a change which involves just running ls to show me what's in a directory.
That's right, and I'm glad you brought up that example because we're going to look at that specifically. So let's take a look at this project. It's called Act, and just a couple things you need to do to get it installed locally. Well, I guess the one dependency is it does use Docker. It runs on Docker. So you need Docker running locally, and then you need to install the Act command line tooling. So I did that using Chocolatey. I'm on Windows, but there's instructions here on how to do that on your particular platform. I just did choco install Act CLI. And now over here, I have Act available to me. Oh, I don't actually want to run it, but we will in a second. But it's just a command line tool that allows me to run my GitHub Actions. What the first thing it does, the very first time you run it, is it will ask you which size of container you want to run it on. So they have a micro image that's pretty small that just has some pretty basic prerequisites installed, like Node.js and a few other things. It won't work with all actions. They have a big one that's 20 gigabytes that's more closely aligned to the machines that GitHub will be running your GitHub Actions on if you're using their hosted runners. And then a medium one that's in between. I've had pretty good luck running the medium one in terms of it having the things that I need to run my workflows at least. And what I'm going to be doing here is running this on the 2 weeks ready project that I contribute to from the Humanitarian Toolbox. And we have quite a few workflows there, some of them that run playwright tests to do end-to-end testing on the site with every pull request. Something I'd like to run and just make sure is working the way I expect it to by running that locally. So I can do things like act list, and that will give me a list of all of my workflows. What's missing here is the name of which workflow file. So the tool seems to kind of assume that you really only have one set of builds or one set of workflows that is for this project. This one's more a bit of a mono repo where we have a backend API, we have a front end JavaScript-based app, and then a admin tool that's built in Blazor. So we have 3 of every build. And if we look at that over here in our workflows file, we have these three here. So we have 2WR app, which is the front end one, and then the admin app and the API. We're just going to focus on this front end one for today. So if I wanted to specify just that one workflow, I can specify a workflow file by giving it the workflows command here. I'm just going to make this a little bigger, move it over. So I can say workflows and give it the name of my workflow. And now it just lists the jobs that exist inside of that particular workflow. You can also have it graph them out for you, which is kind of cool. So I can say -graph. Gives me a little graph of what that looks like. So it does build and then deploy to dev.
ASCII art for the win.
I thought that was a nice touch. I thought that was a really nice touch. Okay, so if I wanted to run, I can simulate the different things that would trigger the build to run. So I could do like a workflow dispatch, which is just a manual run, or I can tell it, pretend it's a pull request that's causing this to run. If I run a pull request, it should just run the build and it skips these other two jobs. So I can do act pull request, give it the name of the workflow, and then let it go. I'm going to pick the medium container here. And it's going to set that up for me. It's going to run in Docker, do its thing. And I'm just going to open a second command prompt here where we can do a Docker PS. We should see a Docker container here that's running for that 2WR app CI/CD. So it's act dash the name of the workflow and then CI/CD build is the naming convention that they use. So this is going and doing its thing. You can see that it's doing an npm install now, which is the first part of it. And what I am going to, the thing that kind of prompted me down this path is that this is actually going to fail because there's going to be some things that are missing to run those playwright tests. I thought I had everything I needed. I did an npx playwright install here, and then I go and run my end-to-end tests, which runs the playwright tests. And that is going to fail because it will be missing some of the dependencies that it needs, which we should find out right away here.
So these Docker images, these are just community-based Docker images where they've just made the best guess as to what is on the GitHub images?
Yeah, and you can tell it to use specifically the GitHub image, like I forget what it's called, like Packer or something that they use.
Oh, okay. So GitHub do publish that as a public image?
Yes, I believe so.
Oh, okay.
There is a whole section here on images that you can dig into.
Oh, interesting.
So the different sizes of images you can use, and they do have some information here on what it is that GitHub uses. I can't remember what it was though. Packer file. Yeah, so this is built from the Packer file that GitHub uses.
Okay.
For GitHub Actions. Yeah. Okay, so that failed, and it's telling me I also need to install dependencies on the machine itself in that VM or that Docker image. So the thing that, after looking it up in the docs, the thing that I actually need to do here is add with deps to it, and then doing one thing further, I notice it's installing Firefox and WebKit. I'm not actually testing against those. So I can tell Playwright to only install the Chromium part. I don't need all those other bits to also be installed. So I can update my workflow. I can come in here and rerun it now. And this time it should succeed, in theory. Now, it's going to take a while because it turns out that install dependencies installs a lot of dependencies into the operating system. So we're just going to watch that happen here. It's going to take a while. And then we're going to look at how we can make sure that it doesn't take quite so long every time we run it going forward.
Are there any baking things that you guys want to talk about in the meantime? Like stuff with chocolate or cheesecake or...
I don't know. I'm getting pretty hungry because it's pretty close to lunchtime for me. So that feels like just a bad idea.
I'm feeling okay because I had a bowl of Frosted Flakes.
Good.
It's brought out the tiger in me. And I'm willing to talk about other foods without being too hungry.
Gotcha.
So you can see now that it's installing all these Ubuntu packages, and that it's going to take a while. There's over 100 of these, so we're not going to make you sit here and watch that. I'm just going to snap my fingers. And just like that, it's done. That didn't take too long.
Amazing.
So
hopefully we get a chance to do it again.
Everything ran. It's all good. And one of the things that I wanted to do now is actually go and inspect inside that container to see what this dist folder does. Because after it's done running the test, it also builds up a shippable version of the app for me. I wanted to go and inspect that and just see what it looks like. So I go to do a Docker PS again. And that container's gone. It's no longer running. So what Act is doing by default is it actually kills that container after it's done. It creates a new one the next time you go to run those that GitHub Actions. So I was really surprised to see that next time I ran Act pull request workflows for this one, it still took a really long time because it had to go and install all those dependencies again. I kind of expected that they would just be there. So there is an extra argument that you need to add here, which is reuse. And if I do that, then it's going to keep the container around. I can go and inspect it after it's done running and look at what's in the container. And it won't take as long the next time I go to run it. So we'll do that again. Yep. Reuse. And now we wait again.
Reuse is a completely different command.
Different image, I think. Isn't that a distribution, Seuss?
Oh, it is. I was thinking of Dr. Seuss.
I went to Dr. Seuss as well, and I thought we were going to start talking about hats for a while.
Different spelling.
Or maybe fish.
500 Hats of Bartholomew Gubbins. Favorite book around here.
So the cool thing now, so that Docker container should be there. I'm going to go and actually connect to that so that I can kind of inspect what's happening in it, like Simon was saying earlier. So I'm going to do a Docker, how do I do that again? I had it written down. Docker exec t, and then I'll need the container image name bin/bash. That should get me in there. Cool, so now I'm in the container where this thing is running. If I go to that 2 weeks ready app folder, I should see there's node modules are being populated. I think that was the step that it was at. Actually, it's past that now. So we're going to sit around and wait. There is no dist folder yet, but that's what we're hoping gets created by the end, and we can go and look at it. And we'll just wait for that to run through what it did last time. All right, it's done again.
Any time at all.
Hardly any time. And the nice thing now is that the container is still there. So if I do an ls here now, I can see that there is a dist folder. And let's go take a look at what's in there. I'll zoom in a little bit more. So the one thing that I wanted to check here, because I know with this particular build, I've had this issue sometimes where it's missing some information from a .env file, and the index.html doesn't have a title in it because it's coming from that env file. So if I do a cat on index.html here, it's all minified, but I can see that the title's empty, which is what I don't want. And looking at my workflow file, I can see that it's because it's actually grabbing that env file. It's supposed to be pulling it from secrets.devenv. And your GitHub Actions probably have some secrets in them too that normally we go and configure inside of GitHub in the repository settings. Fortunately, Act also has a way that we can specify those. There's a couple different options. The one that I'm going to do, this particular secret's a bit of a funny one in that it's a big multi-line thing, but I can specify a environment variable. So called dev-env, which is the name of my secret. I'm going to specify that here. It's a big thing that has a bunch of settings. None of these are actual secrets, so I'm okay with showing them on the screen here. But you can see that I'm setting the view app title to 2 weeks ready dash build by Act. And now when I go and run my workflow again, I just need to add one thing, which I didn't have written down. So I'm going to go and relook that up over here under secrets. I believe it's -S. Oh, secrets. Yeah, -S and then the name of my environment variable, and that's just going to tell me use that environment variable as a secret value for GitHub Actions. So it would be -S dev env. And now everything should run fast this time because I'm reusing my container. So -S dev env. We'll let that run through. And it should set up GitHub Actions to use that secret from my environment variable. Shouldn't take as long to install everything this time. It will still take a little bit of time to do npm CI at a time, and to actually do the npm build task.
So when you run this, it copies your working directory into the Docker image or mounts it?
It makes a copy by default, but there's an option to do it just using doing a mount of your local folder.
Yeah,
so you can run that either way.
Probably, in most cases, a copy would be what I'd be looking for.
I think it's a sensible default.
I assume it excludes the node modules directory, though.
Probably. Actually, I don't know. Probably.
So
we're doing an npm CI in the build anyway. Sorry. So that does it nukes your npm node modules folder. It's the first thing it does before it does the install again.
Okay.
Question on the secret or just secrets or just a confirmation anyways. Nothing inside your build script would need to be modified in order to be compatible with Act locally versus the distributed version. So you're basically priming the environment to pass secrets along. Yeah. And you're not doing something that has to be done like a machine specific config or something, or a script specific config in order to, it's just basically going to be the same thing that you put out to GitHub, but it's going to be able to suck in those secrets from GitHub.
Yep.
Great.
Okay, so that was actually fast this time without us having to cut the video. And if I do an ls, so let's take a look at that dist folder again. And we'll do a cat on index.html. And now we can see that it did in fact pull in, hopefully, my environment variable. Where is my title? There it is. Title.
Yeah, nice.
Build by Act. So that's it. There's lots of good documentation here. As I said, there's lots of different options in terms of what you can use as your base image. There's different ways that you can pass in environment variables. Normally you don't have to do anything specific, like change your workflow file to work with Act. But if you wanted to, say, skip a step because you were running locally, you could do that by adding there's an env.act that you can check to see if you're running in here or not. So you could have something that didn't run locally or something that only ran locally. You could set up different tasks like that. And there's ways also that you can specify additional information to mimic a pull request. Lots of different options there. Super useful tool.
I love how right after I say, and this doesn't require any changes from local to published, and then you immediately clap back with 2 really good reasons why you wanted to run differently. That was brilliant. Couldn't have set you up better for that one, Dave.
Completely unplanned as always. That's how we roll here.
One-hit wonders.
All right. Well, I'm super excited about this. I'm going to use this to avoid that embarrassing list of build failures. And people will think that I'm much smarter than I am going forward just because of this.
That's always the goal, isn't it?
Yeah. Fool some of the people some of the time. That's what I'm looking for.
Just to show that in practice.
Yep.
If we go back here to when I was setting these things up, I mean, there were a lot of failures, even just recently. But those are just me trying to get things working, right? Poke again this time for sure.
Poke again. Awesome.
That's the kind of thing I'm trying to avoid.
Yeah. And I mean, that's out there forever. Like, I mean, it's pretty much on your resume now.
I could delete it, but I'm not going to.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Dave.
All right. Well, indeed. Thank you very much. And for all of our viewers out there, remember to like, comment, and share. And we'll see everybody on the next episode.
Bye.
Cheers.